Hey you, welcome to Selfish Me. I'm Cam, a business psychologist and a proud late bloomer who finally stopped living by everyone else's rules. And this is your space to pause, reconnect, and build a life that feels true to you. Because putting yourself first isn't selfish, it's powerful.
Hello, you. You probably heard about Emma Grede and the headlines she's been making with her views on visibility and proximity in the workplace. In short, Emma argues that being physically present and visible to leadership matters if you want promotion, salary increases, and career growth. Now, I know those comments sparked a lot of debate. Here's where I land on it. I agree that visibility matters. I agree that proximity matters. What I don't agree with is that proximity and visibility has to be physical. Because my own experience tells a different story. My career peak actually came during COVID when we were all working remotely. In those first 2 years of remote work, I was promoted twice. Through connections I made at online events, I was approached about what became my current role. One of the biggest opportunities of my career so far, and a significant increase in compensation. None of that happened because I was sitting in an office. Those opportunities came because people knew who I was, understood the value I brought, and thought of me when opportunities came available. They knew my personal brand that I have created for myself. And this goes beyond just doing a good job. And it's focused on communicating my impact and creating meaningful relationship across the organization and professional network. And that's what I want to talk about today, how to strategically use your personal brand. Because if you are working remotely, working hybrid, or simply trying to create more opportunities for yourself, there is one lesson I have learned the hard way. Your work does not speak for itself. You do. And before we dive into today's conversation, I want to start with a reflection. So first, let's take a big breath together. Inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Allow your shoulders to relax and just be present in your body. I have 3 questions. Please don't overthink them. Just answer. Just see what comes up for you. Okay? Are you ready? Let's go. First, think about the most recent task, goal, or project you completed. Whether it was big or small, how did you communicate the impact of that work? Second, who did you communicate that impact to beyond your manager and your team? Did leaders, stakeholders, collaborators, and decision makers outside of your day-to-day circle have visibility into your contribution? And third, if you were to map out the people who have the greatest influence over your career progression, how many of them truly know you, understand your strengths, and could confidently speak about the value you bring? Take a moment with those questions because your answers will tell you a lot about where you are today and where you need to focus next. I know they would made me uncomfortable earlier in my career because for a long time, I believed that if I worked hard, delivered great results, and kept my head down, people would notice. I also believed that talking about my achievements would make me look arrogant or self-centered. Looking back, those were my limiting beliefs that hold me back. And the reasons why I'm sharing them with you, so hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. And nowhere was that more obvious than during my first promotion process. Honestly, it was a bit of a disaster, a shit show, I would say. Outside of my manager, I'm not sure anyone really knew what I was doing. People knew my job title. They knew I delivered training. They knew I was busy, but they didn't understand the impact of my work. When promotion conversation started, halfway through the process, it changed from a promotion to a side move, which meant a new job title, more responsibility, and no salary increase. I remember feeling furious, frustrated, and honestly, so embarrassed. In my mind, I had been working incredibly hard. I was the one who was staying long hours, doing extra projects. I was the one who was missing family events, birthdays. Why? Because I was constantly working. But what I hadn't realized was that there was a gap between the work I was doing and what other people understood about the work I was doing. The experience taught me a lesson I have never forgotten. People need to understand your impact before they can advocate for your progression. And interestingly, research supports this idea. One of the most referenced frameworks for career success is done by Harvey Kolsman, PIE model. According to that model, career success is influenced by 3 factors. Number 1, performance, which accounts for 10%. Number 2, image, accounts for 30%. And number 3, exposure, accounts for 60%. Now, I know what you are thinking. How can be only 10%? Honestly, that was my reaction too when I first came across this research. It sounds controversial because we want to believe that hard work alone should be enough. Now, performance absolutely matters, by the way. You need to deliver results, you need to create value, but performance alone isn't enough because people can't reward impact they don't see, and they can't advocate for value they don't understand. And you can achieve both and so much more, whether you are remote or hybrid. The key is being intentional how you use your personal brand. So, how we do that? A great question, by the way. Study from 2025 on personal brand equity identified 6 attributes that strengthen your personal brand at work. Visibility, being seen doing the work and being part of the right conversations. Credibility, being trusted as someone who knows their craft. Differentiation, being known for something distinctive. Online presence, being findable and consistent across platforms. Professional network, being connected to the right people. And reputation, being talked about in your absence in the way you want. In this conversation, I want to focus on 3 things that I believe have the biggest impact on your career growth inside any organization. That's visibility, differentiation, and professional networks. So let's start with visibility. Why? Because one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, especially when working remotely, is only sharing their work with their manager. When you work remote, your effort is often invisible. Your impact doesn't have to be. It's about being visible in the places that matter. And a recent research on personal branding points to something called distributed visibility. In other words, visibility isn't about being everywhere. It's about being visible in the places that matter. The goal is to make sure your work, your expertise, and your contributions are visible across the teams, stakeholders, and conversations that influence decisions. That's why I encourage people to share updates, communicate progress, and most importantly, connect their work to business priorities. Don't assume people can connect the dots for you. For example, I deliver training for a living. Training doesn't directly generate revenue. So if I simply say I deliver a program, the business impact isn't obvious. But if I explain that the program helped customer-facing teams perform better, improve customer experience, and support retention, suddenly the value becomes much more obvious. The work matters, but your ability to explain why it matters is just as important. So here's a question for you. Have you ever audited where you are visible and where you are not? Think about the meetings where senior leaders discuss priorities. Are you in any of them? Think about the platforms where ideas, updates, and success travel upward through the organization. Are you part of them? Are you active on them? And finally, volunteer for cross-functional projects, not because you need more work, but because they increase the number of people who see you in action. And remember, according to the PIE model, exposure is a major driver of career success. The more people who understand your capabilities, the more opportunities can find their way to you. Next, we have relationships, one of my favorite topics to talk about it. And I think this is where many people misunderstand personal branding. We often think personal branding is about us, our achievements, our expertise, our accomplishments. But personal branding is actually a social phenomenon. Your brand doesn't exist in your head. It exists in the minds of other people. And that means the quality and the range of your relationships determine whether your brand has an audience at all. And research backs this up. A McKinsey study found that 75% of an individual career capital comes from relationships. That's huge if you think about it. And also, I want to make a distinction. Connection and relationship are not the same thing. You can be connected to hundreds of people on LinkedIn. You can be connected to people across your organization, but it doesn't mean you have a relationship in the way that will move your career forward. So, how you build strong relationship? One concept that completely changed the way I think and build relationship is the trust equation. And this is something that I deliver in every single business I have worked in, because relationships matter. They are the core of any business. So what the model says, it says trust is built on credibility, reliability, and intimacy. And it's reduced by one thing, self-orientation. And intimacy is whether people feel comfortable being themselves around you. And there is self-orientation. It's the level of how focused you are on yourself rather than on other people. To me, intimacy is often the most overlooked element. It's about creating psychological safety. It's about making people feel heard, understood, and valued. It's taking the time to know people as individuals rather than simply seeing them through the lens of a job title. Credibility and reliability might get you invited into the room, but intimacy is what creates the connection that makes people trust you and advocate for you. Sometimes it means sharing something about yourself if you want to create a psychological safety. For example, when I send project updates to senior stakeholders, I occasionally add something personal. I might say, here is the latest update on the project. I'm heading off to Norway next week for a hiking holiday and I'm incredibly excited. I'll pick up things when I am back, but feel free to leave comments in the meantime. And you know what happens? People respond. And that's the start of building a relationship. Which brings me to the next aspect of relationship, range. The broader and stronger your network is, the more opportunities your brand has to travel ahead of you, which means you need to do stakeholder management. And before you switch off, because it sounds like a corporate jargon, stay with me, please. Stakeholder management is really just understanding who influences your work, your opportunities, and your success, and being intentional about building relationship with those people. When you look at your career through that lenses, your stakeholder map becomes much bigger than one person, which most of the time is your manager. One of the most useful and practical activity I do every time I start a new role or a project, I map my stakeholders. And I ask myself 3 questions. Who are the people who influence decisions? Who are the people affected by my work? And who are the people I need to collaborate with regularly to be successful? And perhaps most importantly, who are the people I should be building stronger relationship with? Imagine, if you pick a destination on Google Maps, you would have checked the journey, the stops that you have to make to get there. Stakeholder management is exactly the same. It's your map of stakeholders who help you get to your goal. That's why I don't believe stakeholder management is about politics. It's about understanding the ecosystem you work in. Now, my next recommendation is add mentors and sponsors to your list because they have a different role in your career. A mentor talks to you, a sponsor talks about you. A mentor gives advice, a sponsor creates opportunities. A mentor helps you navigate your career, a sponsor advocates for you when decisions are being made. Research from Catalyst found that women are more likely to receive mentorship without sponsorship. In other words, we get advice, but not the support that we need to progress. And that's a significant difference because career progression often happens when someone says, I think she'll be great for this opportunity, or you should consider her for this project. I was fortunate enough to have a mentor and a sponsor in one person. Not only did he help me identify opportunities and share resources with me to prepare for leadership role, but he also advocated for me in the rooms I wasn't part of. On top of that, we sit down and we did a stakeholder management map, the exact exercise I just mentioned to you. What we did is we mapped out who might be potentially involved in the future interview panel for the role I was applying for. which gave me the opportunity to build genuine relationship with those people beforehand. I volunteered for projects. I looked up for opportunities to collaborate with them. Over time, they got to know me, my work ethics, and the value I brought. So when I eventually sat in front of them in interview, I wasn't just another candidate on a piece of paper. They already knew who I was, and I understood what matters to them. That experience taught me that career progression isn't about being ready when the opportunity appears. It's about building relationships, visibility, and credibility long before opportunities arrives. And I know some of you might be thinking, is it that manipulating people? Wasn't that genuine for you to build relationships with them? You know what? I brought value to them. I did that extra work. I put the effort to get to know them. I didn't become friends with them, by the way. It's not about the friendship. It's about relationships. And now the final element that I want to talk about it when it comes to making your brand work for you is differentiation. And before you start thinking, but I'm not unique, that's not what I mean, and you are unique in your own rights. Differentiation doesn't mean you have to be the only person in the world with your expertise. It doesn't mean you need a completely unique skill set or some groundbreaking talent that nobody else has. To me, differentiation is much simpler. It's about making sure you're communicating outcomes instead of activity. And let me give you an example. Activity sounds like I manage the leadership program. Outcome is I have designed and delivered a 6-month leadership program for 45 managers where I increase their confidence by 50% when it comes to managing difficult conversations, which resulted in less conflict. Another example would be activity sounds like I supported the team through a difficult period. Outcome is I have coached 8 team members through a restructuring process, helping reduce voluntary attrition by 10% compared to previous years. Can you hear the difference? The first describes what you have done it. The second communicates your impact. And impact is memorable, it's powerful, and is tangible. So let's summarize. Impact that is not communicated is invisible, ladies. And an invisible impact rarely gets rewarded. And I learned this the first hand when I've managed a team of 15 coaches who were doing broadly the same job. On paper, their roles looked almost identical. Yet, some stood out more than others. Why? Not because they were necessarily working harder, not because they were dramatically more talented, but because they were able to articulate the value they were creating. They could explain the difference they were making. They connected their work to outcomes and business goals and priorities. And that's a skill, an absolute skill. And I want to say this because as a manager, when I had a team of 15, I wouldn't exactly remember what every single person have done it. It's your job to communicate that to your manager, and then your manager can pass this on. Also, it's your job to communicate to different stakeholders, as we already have mentioned in this conversation. Now, there's another layer to this. The way you communicate your impact should change depending on who you are speaking to. Senior leaders want strategic context. They want to know how your work connects to business priorities, organizational goals, or future opportunities. Peers and cross-functional partners usually need operational clarity, what you are delivering, what's changing, and how this affects them. If you are leading a team, your people need something different again. They need purpose and directions. You have to be able to answer those 3 questions. Why does it matter? What are we trying to achieve? And what role they play in making it happen. One of the biggest mistakes professionals make is communicating exactly the same way to everyone. I know this because I used to do that. I would just copy and paste exactly the same message to everyone. The same update, the same level of detail, the same language. And when that happens, nobody gets the version that resonates most with them. The goal isn't just about communicating more. The goal is to communicate in a way that helps different stakeholders understand the value you are creating through the lenses that matters to them. Okay, throughout this conversation, we talk about 3 things that can help strengthen your professional brand at work. That includes visibility, professional network, and differentiation. But there's one more thing I want to leave you with. Professor Hermina Ibarra argues that professional identity isn't something fixed. It's not a statement on LinkedIn. It's not a personal branding exercise you complete once. It's something that evolves through action, through the projects you take on, the relationship you build, the experience you have, and the stories you tell yourself about who you are becoming. And I love that perspective because it reminds us that personal branding isn't just about communicating what you have already done. It's also about signaling where you are going. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from today's conversation is this: don't wait to be discovered. Don't assume your work will speak for itself. And don't leave your career growth to chance. Be intentional about your visibility. Be intentional about your relationships. Be intentional about communicating your impact. As a side note, if you are new to Selfish Me or this is your first time hearing about personal brand, don't worry, I got your back. In season 1, we talk about how to build personal brand. So my recommendation will be just scrolling down and you will see it, personal branding episode. Start with that, build the brand that you want to have, and you're good to go. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Give a like, follow, and until next week. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. It honestly means the world to me. If something from today's chat made you smile, think, or feel seen, share it. That's how our Selfish Me community grows. This podcast is about real voices and reminding each other that we are not alone. We are all figuring out how to do life our way, and you are doing better than you think.